Good morning, everyone. Hope I'm finding you in the middle of a fantastic day. This morning, our verse is going to be out of the book of Hebrews, one of my absolute favorite books of the Bible, chapter 11 and verse 25, which reads, "Choosing rather to suffer affliction with the people of God than to enjoy the pleasures of sin for a season." And there's so much going on here. I love this verse. And the first thing you have to understand about this verse is it's sort of a part two of the verse above it. If you read verse 24, it says, "By faith Moses, when he was come to years, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter." So we're talking about Moses choosing to suffer the affliction of the people of God rather than enjoy the pleasures of sin for a season. And this verse, man, doesn't really do justice to what Moses gave up. Moses didn't just give up the pleasures of sin. Moses gave up uh, the perfect life, as a lot of people would understand it to be. Moses gave up being royalty. Moses gave up being wealthy. Moses gave up being well respected and looked up to. Moses gave up a wonderful life. He gave up so much. Why would he do that? He chose instead to suffer. Why would anybody choose to suffer? Because of what we read in the verse above. He said when he was come to years, he refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter. Now, in this story, where you go back to Exodus and you read where he was drawn out of the water, hence his name Moses, because the word Moses means drawn out, it always refers to this woman as Pharaoh's daughter. It never gives her name. It's always careful to say Pharaoh's daughter. Now, the reason for that is very simple. It's because it's not about the daughter. It's about Pharaoh. And that's the point. Because as Moses gets up to the certain age where he makes the choice, he doesn't want to be associated with this man, Pharaoh. Well, why is that? Well, that's because he's had the opportunity to learn the truth. That there is only one God. And that he is the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, and that he is the almighty, all-powerful God. And so, if you know much about Egyptian mythology, Pharaoh always was considered to be a god. He was one of the Egyptian gods. And so, Moses, as he grew to a certain age, didn't want to be associated with that sort of thinking. He didn't want to be associated as part of a family of somebody who considered themselves to be up there with the one true God. And so he chose to reject Pharaoh and reject that lifestyle because of the theology behind it, because of the truth and the lies having to do with it. You know, so many times in our lives we're given this choice. You can either kick back, relax, and enjoy a life of sin, or you can choose to do the right thing and suffer. And folks, I'm not going to lie to you this morning. Unfortunately, a lot of times in this earth, that is the choice. I'm not going to lie to you again. There's a pleasure in sin. There is. There's a pleasure in sin. And there can be a suffering in doing the right thing. So that's where it comes down to what you might call the nitty-gritty. That's where it comes down to heart. That's where it comes down to strength of heart, but also what's in your heart. Is your heart full of love for God? Is your heart full of a desire to do the right thing? Or is your heart full of selfishness? You see, a selfish person will still do the right thing, but he'll only do the right thing so long as it benefits him. But a person who desires to please God, and a person who has a desire to do the right thing, does it just because it's the right thing. They don't need it to benefit them. They don't pray because it's going to enhance their personal life. They pray because they have a desire to pray. They love to pray. They enjoy prayer in their life as they wake up in the mornings or as they go to bed at night or whenever they pray. A person who gets involved in church There are many who get involved in church because they think it's going to benefit them in some way. But I tell you, those never really last. The ones that last are the ones that get involved in church because they love the Lord and because they have a desire for it. Those are the people that do the right thing no matter what the right thing is. The other people, the ones that choose to enjoy the pleasures of sin, yeah, sure, it may seem like they have more fun than us. It may seem like they're enjoying life better than us. And you know what? At certain times, they even might be enjoying life better than us. But let me tell you something. It doesn't last. It's not forever. Look at the very bottom of verse 25. What does it say? Does it just say, then to enjoy the pleasures of sin and stop right there? Well, if you're reading along, you'll know that that's not where it stops. There's 3 more words in that verse that say, for a season. Now, that phrase, for a season, it just means for a specific amount of time. The pleasure of sin doesn't last forever. I tell you, what you end up with is a lot of disappointment, a lot of heartache. My old youth pastor used to tell us teenagers that sin will take you farther than you want to go. It will keep you longer than you want to stay. And it'll cost you more than you wanted to pay. And you know, that's so true. It's almost like if you've ever gone to some venue or sporting event or something that you were really looking forward to, but when you got there, it was crowded, the game wasn't very good, your team kept losing, the people you were with turned out to be not as much fun as you thought they were going to be, and you're further away than home than you wanted to be, you stayed a lot longer than you wanted to, and it cost you a lot more than you wanted to pay. That's what sin is. It's real enticing on the front, and man, it looks a lot of fun. But once you actually get into the thing, once it actually sucks you in, once the honeymoon phase of the sin wears off, what you're left with is a lot of heartache and a lot of disappointment. A lot of people, I can't tell you how many times I've heard them say, well, I know I should be doing this, but I'm going to choose to do the wrong thing. Why would they say that? Because it's what they wanted. Because they're choosing to enjoy the pleasures of sin. And I can tell you every time I've heard somebody say that, after every time, there have been consequences for that person. They enjoy their wrong choice for a short amount of time, and then what they're left with is a lot of heartache for the consequences of their poor decision. And you know what? The suffering that the Christian endures for doing the right thing, let me encourage you by saying that's just for a season too. Nothing lasts forever except for the things of God. Eventually, all those that cause you to suffer, God will end that trial. God will remove that from your life eventually. He might not do it as fast as we want Him to, but that's the thing about a trial. Trials have an end. And when you get through that trial, what you're left with is what we talked about yesterday, a strong heart, a strong faith, and a much longer season than to enjoy the pleasures of righteousness. When you get to the place in life where you can enjoy the pleasures of righteousness, it lasts a lot longer than enjoying the pleasures of sin. These people who live that sinful life, they wake up the next morning with no memories, a hangover, and regret. I tell you, I hung out last night. I had a lot of fun. We didn't have any alcohol involved. There were no drugs involved. There was no sins involved. And yet we had a magnificent time. I got to tell you, the pleasure of remembering those nights, that isn't just a season. That'll go on. But for those who've chosen to do the wrong thing, that'll haunt you. I'll end with a story of King David, whose heart was wholly after God. And yet one day he was found on the roof looking toward the lake at night. He knew he shouldn't have been doing that. He knew what he would see. He saw a woman bathing herself. and should have gone downstairs, should have even been there in the first place. He should have been on the battlefield with his men, but he wasn't. And instead, he chose to take that woman for himself. She was a married woman. He knew that, and he didn't care. He took her for himself. And when the husband was coming home, going to find out because she had gotten pregnant, he had the man sent into battle alone so that he would die on the battlefield. And God smote him for that, smote his heart for that. He repented. But you know the thing about that was, that man's sword, the man he sent to die in the battle, that man's sword never left his house. Today, tomorrow, and every day for the rest of your life, you'll have a choice to make. Will you do the right thing? Or will you allow that sword to haunt you like it did King David? Thank you for listening.